Okay, here we go. So for those of you that don't know, you should be able to, in my videos, you should be able to get access to the parts list for the WRX. I think it's in the description. It should be. It should be. Let's go back to this. Here we go. So this is kind of my spreadsheet that I use to keep track of what's happening with the WRX. So we've got future parts that I want or am considering, along with part numbers, some notes, and other things like that, so that if people want to do anything that I've done to my car to their own car, they kind of know how I did it and they don't have to do all of the weird research that I did. Like, for example, with the blow-off valve, right? Greddy Type S blow-off valve. I don't know what the part number is. I just got it off of eBay. But I do include the adapter I used because it's not a part that's meant for the WRX. You know, it's not a bolt-on part. You know, we had to change from recirculation to open vent, basically, so that we could hear the blow-off valve. And it sounds great and it works great. It does require a Pro Tune because otherwise the car will die at idle because it doesn't know what the heck is going on. The ECU. We've got a little over 300 brake horsepower, which is cool. So basically, back to the WRX. I want to do the 2018 facelift front bumper with different fog light bezels and get that on the car so that it doesn't look terrible. Because as you guys know, I drove the car through a storm drain because I didn't know it was there, and it completely wrecked my front bumper. And also just the 2018 bumpers look so much better. And so I want to do that, and then I want to wrap it, and then I want to go with some wheels. So let's start with the bumper. So the bumper is just an OEM bumper, but it's been paint matched by Subi Speed, so I can order the bumper, and we don't have to paint it. We can just put it straight on, and I think that is much better. It starts out pretty pricey, $1,600 for an OEM bumper, but it is the whole thing with the lighting and all that sort of stuff. So we'll do that. Then we'll do the wrap because now all of the exterior parts will be on. And then wheels and maybe headlights, depending. But those are like the last couple things I really want to do to the WRX. And then it's on to bigger and better things. But I also wanted to just tell you guys, for those of you, I don't know how many of you actually have cars that are modified. But I recommend two things. One, if you are planning on selling your car or you think there's any chance in hell that you are selling your car that you love so much that you're personalizing it, you should do two things. One, keep receipts. Make note of who works on the car, what parts are being put on, part numbers and details and notes, kind of like how I'm doing, because that can really help with resale. And I'm going to tell you a story that Herschel Brewer told me, without naming any names, that there was someone that bought secondhand a E46 M3 race chassis, an official one. And he had the receipts and all the documents, and so he could prove that that was a real BMW Motorsport chassis. I can't remember which one it was. I can't remember if it was a VLN or if it was or a GT chassis. It might have been a VLN. Still very cool. And he had a roll cage put into it that was supposed to meet FIA regulations and standards. So then they had all the people from the FIA come down and certify it, and the roll cage got stamped. But he didn't hold on to the FIA certification documents. And 5 years later, when he tries to sell the car, when it's got all sorts of parts and mods on it, the only thing that he can prove is that it's an official race car chassis. He can't prove that the pistons are out of a race car. He can't prove that the cams and the crankshaft. He couldn't prove any of that because he didn't hold on to documentation. It could have been anything, and he wouldn't have been able to prove what it was. The only thing he could prove was that it was a race car chassis. He still was able to sell it for a good amount of money, but he could have sold it for much more if he had proved that. And if you keep track of who worked on it, that would have increased the value even more. Because let's just be clear here. If you've got an official race car chassis and you want it to be done super properly, no aftermarket, no nothing, send it all the way to BMW and have your E46 M3 be made into a proper race car, you need $600,000 to $700,000 at least. And that is the truth. That is actually the price range that you would be expecting from a minimum. And this is using Modern, brand new, custom-made factory parts from BMW just for you, it's more than $500,000 at least. It's a race car, and they're building it just for you from scratch. They might use some like parts from modern race cars, like I think it's the P63 out of the M8 race car. They're going to use an X-Track $60,000-$70,000 racing transmission. You know, when you're building an actual race car, like, because the M3 project I'm telling you guys about that I want to do, that's not an actual race car from BMW. It's nowhere near. I could spend 150 grand on it. I'm probably not going to, but even if I did, it would not hold a candle to the work that is done to actual BMW race cars. And when you do get that work done, and then you decide you want to sell the car and you can't prove it's been done, you're out of luck. You either dig through your filing cabinets and make a lot of awkward phone calls, pathetically begging people to vouch for you, or you sell your car for less than half of what it's actually worth, or what you could sell it for. I don't know how much it's worth, given that whole R34 GTR thing and how M-Spec nerds are like 280 grand at this point, at least on the auctions. But yeah, that's my advice to you guys. Make sure that you keep track of what you do to your cars, even if it's simple stuff or big things. Make notes. Make note of who did it, part numbers, and all that sort of stuff. Because otherwise, it's all going to go down the drain. And it's going to be extremely depressing. So even though this is just a WRX, you know, when I put the car up for sale, people will have a detailed understanding of what's been done to it, you know, what the intake was, you know, what the part numbers are, the exhaust, like every little pieces, the adapter for the blow-off valve, what clutch is on it, what I did with the fog lights, what wing is it, because, you know, a lot of people might assume, oh, that's just a normal GTC 300 WRX wing, when actually the mounts on the actual WRX wing are further out closer to the edge of the trunk, and I hate that, so I got a wing that's actually normally meant for an STI because it looks better, and so I use the part number for the STI version. So that's very important to know, and I also will name drop some people from different companies. I'll talk about the tuners and where I got the parts and all that sort of stuff. You should do that. It's just a good habit to have.